people in visual art distrust the notion of theatricality. They really think it means inauthentic, false, a sham, and they're looking for aura and authenticity and for something to be real and something to be credible. And so they see theatricality as something dangerous, and it's used as a word of disparagement. And in theatre, obviously, theatricality is the whole point. And the whole point is that it's fake and it's sham and it's inauthentic. that's where the imagination is opened up. That's the potential in it. But the potential in visual art seems to be the opposite. And very famously in 1967, there was a very famous article about theatricality in contemporary art by Michael Fried, Art and Objecthood, where he said it's no longer possible for an artist to be authentic. These new installations are completely inauthentic and they need the visitor to complete them. And so he saw all contemporary art from 67 onwards as inauthentic and theatrical.
I think it's such an interesting topic because there's such a history of mutual hostility and suspicion between from visual artists who have very often thought that theatre was, particularly conceptual artists and so on, are so suspicious of, I suppose, the conventionality of certain kinds of theatre, the fakery of theatre, some of the trappings, whereas conceptual art has been very often about trying to reveal what the processes are that are, I suppose, hidden by some of the conventions of theatre. And on the other hand, of course, theatre sometimes, perhaps because it historically has a more direct connection with trying to please audiences. It's very suspicious of the niche quality, perhaps the elitist artistic discourses of the fine arts and conceptual art. So in that sense, it's a very contested territory. Well, it's a kind of no man's land, I think, between those two realms. So it makes it kind of irresistible to want to try and do something in the middle of those things.
There's just a difference in the way we look at objects. And even when Johnny and Nick were describing their piece yesterday, they were talking about it as being kinetic and being almost musical and being a rhythm and being out of phase. And I was thinking, yeah, but it's an unreal object. It's an object that's pretending to be a door, but it isn't a door. And then there's a set in front that's pretending to be a door, but it isn't a door. And they weren't seeing it as an object in that sense at all. For them, primarily, it was the movement and the sound and the ambience. And for me, it was an object. And then I'm working out from the object. And that's just a totally different, a difference in culture and a difference in the way of looking at things.
We've made an automated scene changer that contextually has a grounding in, flying in scenery in a theatre, depicting a change of scene, basically, in front of, in inverted commas, a real door that deals with sort of what is real, what isn't real, what's fake, just a sort of general theatrical fakery.
I've made two pieces for Stage Fright. One is called Stage Door, and it occupies the foyer area of the CCA. And I suppose both works are intended to have a kind of combined effect on the public, who really fulfill the role of performers in the pieces. So Stage Door, the work in the foyer space, that's a kind of composite backstage area. So there are elements taken from the backstage area of a normal theatre.
I think what I'm trying to do with this thing, its piece, is to kind of investigate in a particularly sort of impressioned way what actually happens in theatre anyway, which is I think the strange phenomenon of people standing up in public pretending to be saying things for the first time repeatedly. A performer has a script and they have to perform it as soon as the gallery opens. The script is only about 45 seconds long. They then immediately have to perform it again and again and again the whole way through the day with short breaks. And the key task is that every time they're supposed to try to perform it exactly the way they performed it last time. And the effect of that will be that whenever they make a mistake, whenever they slip, they dry, they pause, whatever it is, that gets incorporated into the repetition. So the idea is that during the course of the day, the piece kind of degrades virally and transforms into, I don't know, something else.
The second half of this kind of two-piece installation is performance in progress, and that's an installation in the restaurant area. And the main part of it really is treating the dimensions of the CCA restaurant as a fly tower. So that's the area that extends above the stage in a traditional theatre, and that would often have bars with lighting and sets hung on the bars, set pieces that would fly down to stage level at different points in a show. So what I wanted to do was take the restaurant space, and particularly its quite unique height, the glass-roofed atrium in the restaurant, and to suspend a set in that space above the restaurant that would act as a kind of a potential set to come down for an act of a play that's yet to happen.
There was a piece of work that I made for Transmission last year, which set up a structure of kind of working in a space with some performers for 2 days and building a set for that. I mean, I guess that I have always been very interested in the ritual of performance and theatre, and the construction of the relationship, the construction of questions of liveness, the construction of, and I guess the way that that feeds into exhibitions, the production of exhibitions, production of installation, and the construction of the viewer, and how they kind of figure within that setup. And I guess when I was young, I went to the theatre a lot with my mum, and that has very much kind of fed into, I think, you know, I guess that's kind of, you know, really one of the kind of places that I guess, you know, my exposure to culture really kind of first started to happen. And I think that's very much kind of filtered through into my my work as an artist, in every way, really. I mean, in every kind of form. Like, I mean, it's always kind of been about structures and sets and, yeah, the kind of construction of space, and how people or objects are kind of organised in that.
The piece is called The Moment When. That piece of writing is a play or a text which I wrote using certain rules, which was basically I put myself into a room and I set a timer and I wrote for exactly 1 hour. I wasn't allowed to stop, and if I ever ran out of steam, I had to write, I liked the moment when. The whole piece begins with, I like the moment when, and describes a show. It comes from an exercise that I do in theatre, where I use the formula, I like the moment when, to describe a show that doesn't exist yet, that we might make. And the other rule was I had to drink a bottle of red wine in that hour as well. I had filmed over my shoulder the writing appearing, and I used that tape to create a sort of teleprompt that I then got an actor to go into the same room, an actor called Callum Cuthbertson, to go into the same room that I'd been in, also with a new bottle of wine. And he was given, completely sight unseen, the script that I had written, kind of in real time, so as close to the moment that it was written in the hour as possible. My own experience of writing is that when the writing goes very well, I don't remember it. I have no memory of when the idea came or how it came or what happened with it. I only remember the bits where it's not coming. So one is sort of transported. So I did get this thing of, which actually has come true, because funnily enough, I thought that the text that would emerge would be a very sort of avant-garde piece. But in fact, what happened is really quickly, a play emerged, an actual new play, a play I'd never thought of before, had no plans of it. And I suppose what was interesting to me, that the project had, I thought jokingly tried to capture, but then turns out actually to have captured, is the actual moment when a play is born.